Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. Please join us for Jayarada Madhav prayers. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Please join us for Mangalacharan prayers. Together we'll sing. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiryet Shavatam Swakatha Kṛṣṇa Punya Shamana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Hya Bhadrani Vidhunoti Suhasatam Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Hare Kṛṣṇa. So today we will be studying Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 Chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse. Vyasa Uvacha Iti Samprashna Samhrishto Vipranam Rāma Pratipujya Vachastesham Pravaktum Upachakrame. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Ugrashava Suta Goswami, the son of Rāma, being fully satisfied by the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. Purport: the sages of Naimisharanya asked Suta Goswami 6 questions, and so he is answering them one by one. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Please join us for Guru Pranati. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Kṛṣṇa Hare Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma Hare Rāma 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 Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa. So in the previous class, Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 Chapter 1, we discussed as how Srila Vyasadeva in the very first 2 verses, both the verses of first canto are based on Gayatri Mantra. So, on that meter. And what does it mean? Gaya Atri. So it glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, Lord Shri Krishna, and that's the essence of the, the 3 Vedas. And the Acharyas have given many other meanings with respect to that, which, glorifies the Lord and lifts us to His service and delivers us from the clutches of Maya, right? The 3 modes of material nature. Another definition given by Acharyas is that relieves us from the 3 types of miseries. What are the 3 types of miseries? Adhyatmic, which is from our mind; Adi Bhautik, which is from other living entities; and Adi Devik, which is the natural disturbances coming from demigods. Of these 3, which one can we control, right? When we take shelter, of course we can control. When we take shelter at the lotus feet, all 3 of them. Yet at the same time, Adhyatmic, which is the strongest of all, it takes away so much of our energy on a daily basis. And in the very beginning, in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada said that the sages asked 3 questions. And now Suta Goswami, son of Rāma, Ugrashava, so that's his name also, he is responding to them. Every day,
Everyone is asking questions. Srila Prabhupada in the purpose is writing, even the birds, when they wake up in the morning, they're asking questions, where can I find food? How can I feed my family? So every one of us on a daily basis, doesn't matter whether we are human beings, whether we are aquatics, whether we are animals, whether we are birds, every living entity in this material world is constantly asking questions. And we are also responding to various questions others are asking. So that is the nature of life. On a daily basis, we are constantly engaged in asking questions and responding to various questions that are being posed in front of us, seeking solutions. However, the glories have been identified here is that the questions which are related to Lord Shri Krishna, the absolute truth, are of perfect relevance. So Sutta Goswami was feeling very satisfied, and he reciprocates, in that mood, that I am very happy with the questions that you have asked, because these questions are the perfect questions, because they relate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. And such questions can only are the questions that can satisfy to our heart. And we have observed this, right? When we are very disturbed, what do? We take shelter of the lotus feet of Lordship. We go to the temple. And when we sit in the temple, even when we have disturbed mind, we feel the calmness because of the spiritual energy all around in the temple. We see that. And many devotees, we establish temples within our home. So one of the main rooms in the house is kept, not the one of the smallest room, rather one of the main room is kept for the Lordship, because he is actually the true proprietor, right? Bhuktaram Yagyatapsam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He is the Maheshwar of all the spiritual and material universes. So what we talk about our small puny home, right? So whatever space that we have, the best place should be given for puja. And when we establish Lord in that room, in that nice environment, we should also serve him. And by serving, the spiritual energy is vibrating in that room. And we as a family can sit there and do kirtan. We can do hearing. So this has also been glorified in this chapter. So in the previous chapter, chapter 1 of first canto, 3 aspects were covered. First aspect is Srila Vyasadeva, he is praying to the Lordship, establishing the supremacy of the Lordship. And we also understand, just by properly understanding and in the right mode being received the Gayatri Mantra, which is, it is in the Gayatri Mantra of Peter, one can get realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, one can realize the absolute truth. Second aspect is, he is establishing the qualifications of one who is speaking Bhagavatam. So, he is establishing the qualification of Sutta Goswami. He heard it in Parampara from Shukdev Goswami. And he is a highly learned person, son of Rāma who was entrusted with all the Puranas by Srila Vyasadeva himself. And Sutta Goswami is also one of the disciples of Vyasadeva. So again, his disciple and the disciple's son, both are disciples of Srila Vyasadeva. And Sutta Goswami has properly understood the essence of all the Puranas and the Vedas, and so the sages at Naimisharanya, they are, requesting him to, speak about. But how do they request? By giving him an esteemed seat at the Vyasasana. And then they are humbly inquiring. So establishing the qualification of the speaker and of the audience. So that is the second aspect. Third aspect is submissively asking questions. And the sages, they are asking questions submissively, and they are saying that we never get tired of hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So please tell us what is for the benefit of all humanity, what is the ultimate good, which is the ultimate benefit for everyone. Everyone means not just human beings, but all living entities. And it is said that Srimad Bhagavatam is also meant for Rasikas. It is meant also for Paramhamsas, because even they relish Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. They are fully satisfied and they experience transcendental bliss when they hear the subject matter of, Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam means one that is related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there are two kinds of things that occur in Bhagavatam. What are those things? glories of the devotees of the Lordship. We hear about how they lived, right? And how they surrendered and how they served the Lordship. So when we hear the glories of the devotees of the Lordship like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj, Amrish Maharaj, then Lord Krishna becomes happy. And then the second part is glories of the Lord, as how He is providing us protection, how He is providing us, the various, His creative impetus and, sthan, as well as, completely liberating all His, surrendered souls, all the surrendered souls that we hear about in Bhagavatam. And when we hear about Lord Shri Krishna, the Vaishnavas, the devotee of the Lord, they are satisfied, they become happy. So we get blessings both ways. And so the sages at Naimisharanya, they are inquiring. So they inquired 6 questions. So, and also in this chapter occur the very invocation mantras. So we hear, from the first shloka of Bhagavatam 1.1.1, we hear, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then we hear about 3 other shlokas as part of the invocation shlokas. Those 3 invocation shlokas also appear in this chapter, chapter 2. Now, one of the most important thing is, let's also understand that this, at the beginning of this chapter, Sutta Goswami is remembering and paying obeisances to Shukadeva Goswami. So Shukadeva Goswami is son of Srila Vyasadeva. And from Shukadeva Goswami, Sutta Goswami heard Srimad Bhagavatam. And he's saying that I pay obeisances to my spiritual master. He's saying that with respect to instructing spiritual master. So you can have many instructing spiritual master, but only one initiating spiritual master. For Sutta Goswami, the initiating spiritual master was Srila Vyasadeva himself. His father, Romaharshan, was an instructing spiritual master, as well as Shukadeva Goswami. Now, what is the story of Shukadeva Goswami? He is establishing that Shukadeva Goswami can enter into the heart of everyone. So this is a process. This is a deductive, descending process in disciplic succession, in parampara, where we hear the glories of the Lordship. And when we hear, automatically, when we do it with attention, Shraddha Dhyanasya, so with Shraddha and with Dhyan, with attention, with full absorption, with, being understanding the various aspects. And one of the important ways, I'll give you an example. We call many names, right? But one of the interesting things is when we hear someone's name, say we hear name of our brother or a sister, as soon as we hear the name, immediately their picture appears in our mind, right? We immediately remember them, and it invokes different kind of feelings, hopefully good feelings, right? And so this is the essence, that when we hear someone's name, and if we know the person, then immediately their picture it appears in our heart, and related to that, their appearance as it appears in our mind, we also remember some beautiful loving exchanges with them. So, and then we start to suddenly go into smaranam. So 3 processes have been glorified in this chapter. Again and again, the purpose, Srila Prabhupada explains that Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So of the 9 processes in this Kali age, these 3 are very powerful. And we all start with Shravanam, more about hearing. And as we hear, Smaranam happens. And then when we describe, that also leads to more Smaranam. And it becomes more and more stronger. So our faith grows, our attachment to the lotus feet, our asakti grows, our interest in the subject matter, it grows, our ruchi grows. And then, of course, as ruchi grows, our asakti grows, the bhava, our affection starts to develop, which becomes so concentrated that it takes the form of prema, which is the goal of life. So that is, again, Sambandha is Jivera Sarupaya Krishna Nityadas. We had eternal summit of Lord Shri Krishna, and Lord Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then Abhidheya are the 9 processes of devotional service. And Prayojana is the goal of life, which is to attain love of Godhead. So there is a very simple process. And this process becomes even more, stronger, it's strengthened, and we get more will. Our faith rises more and more when we do attentive chanting. And it's very simple. All we have to do is call out to the Lordship in a prayerful mode. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa. So divinity and divine service, that's the topic of this chapter. And the supreme occupation has been described. So we can carry out various kind of activities with mind, body and words, right? Those are the three ways. And dharma sunishtita pumsam vishvakshena kathaso yaha na utpadyate yadi ratim shramayeva kevalam. Dharma, Srila Prabhupada translates as, one's occupational duties, like something that sustains us. So our activities should be oriented towards dharma, which is sustainable activities. Not greedy activities, not self-inspired activities, not speculative activities, but rather sustaining activities. And this is where he is very clearly identifying that we should be engaged with our mind, body and words into activities that develop our affection, develop our attraction, develop our, attention and absorption, and becoming more attached to the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. So there is Shraddha, and Nishtha is stronger Shraddha. That with Nishtha, when we constantly hear, chant and remember the Lordship, it leads to in Bhajan Kriya, all that anarthas they leave away. So this is the glories of bhakti, that all the anarthas automatically go away and Lord's devotional service bhakti is established as an irrevocable fact. We'll be hearing more about that. So what is, and we develop ruchi after nishtha, and then asakti, and then bhava and prem. So that is the science of devotional service. And here, let's hear about Shukdev Goswami. When Sutta Goswami is revealing Shukdev Goswami, what is the story of Shukdev Goswami? Shuka means parrot, and he's not a simple parrot in his previous life. He was a pet parrot of Radharani, right? Radharani had this parrot, Shuka, and this parrot was the messenger, the carrier of message between Radha and Krishna. So he would take message from Radharani and he would take it to Lord Krishna and deliver it to Lord Krishna and take message from Lord Krishna and bring it back to Radharani. So he was the media through which, as flute, Vamshi, we know, is a media to call Radharani. So he was Shuka, this parrot was the media between Radharani and Krishna to exchange their loving messages. And when Radharani was ready to go back home to return to her abode, as Lord Krishna was leaving, the parrot was very anxious. And at that time, Radharani said, "Don't worry, you will not feel our absence when you constantly hear Hari Katha." So that is also very important, that by hearing Hari Katha, automatically there will be affection and constant absorption will be there. So there cannot be any anxiety, there cannot be any disturbances, any misery when we are fully absorbed in Hari Katha. And that's why people say that we come to the classes and it is very nice to hear the classes. But when we leave, suddenly we are back in a material world and we forget most of the items that were discussed in the classes. We go back to our own ways. Yes, you have to hear it on a regular basis. So Shukdev Goswami, when he heard this, he started looking for places where Harikatha is going on, and of course he is going to holy places. And just so happened that he went to Kailash Parvat, where Lord Shiva was speaking Bhagavatam to Goddess Parvati, his consort. And Shuka, the parrot, hid himself in the tree beneath which Lord Shiva and Parvati were sitting. Now somebody could say, why was Lord Shiva speaking Bhagavatam to Goddess Parvati? What is the secret? Well, Lord Shiva is always glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But this was a special occasion that once Goddess Parvati saw that he's wearing a garland of skull. Various skulls are there. And he's like, what is this? And he says, actually, Devi, I am, Amar, I am, immortal, but you have had many lives. So I have to keep you dear, I kept the skulls. So again, this is in one of the Upapuranas, Devi Purana, this description comes. And she's shocked. He's like, if you are immortal, why am I not immortal? He said, because you have not heard the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. You have not heard Srimad Bhagavatam. She says, I want to hear, I desire to hear. Right? So he started reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam within itself is sufficient for self-realization. And of course, understanding absolute truth, we can even understand from Bhagavad Gita. What is, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. He is the absolute truth. In the very first verse, Srila Vyasadeva establishes Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa as the absolute truth, who is directly and indirectly cognizant of all that is going on in the spiritual world and the material world. Which means cognizant means he is fully aware of, he knows what is going on, and he is completely independent to do whatever he desires to do. Now we have discussed many stories related to whatever he desires to do. If someone is independent, if someone is the proprietor, how they can behave. So Shuka was hiding in the tree, because his color is green and the green leaves, so he was able to hide. Now Goddess Parvati, every time as Lord Shiva was speaking, he would sometimes pause and she would say, I'm awake, I'm listening. And the parrot observed, Shuka observed that after some time she fell asleep. And he did not want that the Bhagavad recitation by Lord Shiva should stop. So as he continued to speak, Shuka in the voice of Goddess Parvati would say, giving an indication, yes, I am listening, yes, I am listening. So as Lord Shiva finished Srimad Bhagavatam, at that time, Goddess Parvati woke up and he said, so Devi, how do you like this recitation? She's like, oh, forgive me, my Lord, I fell asleep. And Lord Shiva said, if you were asleep, then who was responding on your behalf? He started looking around. Who is the living entity? Because in the beginning, Lord Shiva, to establish the qualification, he actually played his Damaru, telling all of the living entities to go away from that area so that he can recite it to Goddess Parvati. And he's thinking that there is another living entity in this area who has been listening, who could understand what I'm speaking. And that living entity may not be qualified, and that can cause a great havoc. And we see in Kali age, there are so many unscrupulous persons, speculative people who are very good speakers, right? They are very attractive speakers. They start speculating on the scriptures. And Srila Prabhupada, in his introduction, in the preface of Bhagavad Gita, also states, Bhagavad Gita as it is, that when he was asked by an American lady to provide an English translation of Bhagavad Gita, he tried looking, but he saw that the commentators had put their own ideas, their speculative thoughts, to benefit them in the books. And they were, giving impersonal theories and many other theories based on their speculative understanding. And so he wrote himself Bhagavad Gita as it is. As it is means as Lord Kṛṣṇa intended. So when Lord Shiva, he came to know that, okay, it was not Goddess Parvati, so who was speaking? Then he saw that it is the parrot hiding in the tree. That is the cause. So Lord Shiva, with his Trishul, he ran after the parrot, and the parrot, knowing that Lord Shiva wants to kill him, flew away. And he's flying, he's going to Badrika Ashram. So it just so happens that at that time, Vyasadeva was starting to recite Srimad Bhagavatam. And at that time, his wife, she just yawned, and by divine providence, by divine arrangement, Shuka, he went into her mouth and took the form of baby in her womb. And at that time, Lord Shiva came and he said that, have you seen a parrot that came? And Vyasadeva said, what is the purpose? Why are you looking for this parrot? He says that he heard Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Vyasadeva said, if he heard Srimad Bhagavatam, he has become immortal, he is fully realized, so you will not be able to kill him anyway. And hearing this statement from Vyasadeva, Lord Shiva, he returned back, fully satisfied by this response. And now Vyasadeva, he is reciting again. So this is the second time Shukdev Goswami is hearing in his mother's womb the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. Now sometimes people, they challenge this aspect. Well, there are so many aspects that we do not understand yet, right? Just about 20 years back, we used to call love Kush, to be the Kush was, a clone baby from love's Hare, sons of Lord Ramchandra and Sita Mata. So because people could not clone, so they would not accept it. Now that they are able to clone, they say, yes, yes, it is possible. So when we look at the Shastra, Srila Prabhupada said magic and miracles are for unintelligent people, because everything is arranged by the divine energies of the Lord. And so all we have to do is take shelter of the ones who know the truth, Tattvadarshi, who know the truth as it is, so that they can reveal the truth to us. Yet at the same time, why waste time in all kind of unscrupulous talks? Rather, we should be engaging in talks like in this particular chapter has been described, Sutta Goswami is revealing, which are related to the glorification of the Lordship, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as Shukdev Goswami, he is in the womb, but he knows that as soon as he comes out of the womb, Maya will catch him. Material energy she will catch him. And this is what happens. We are in a womb in a very uncomfortable situation. It has been described in Srimad Bhagavatam as we'll study. It is a very difficult condition for a baby, and the baby is constantly being bitten by various kind of worms, in the stomach, and the position is very uncomfortable, upside down, and the baby is clasped. And in the 7th month, it is said that when Lord appears, the baby is praying to the Lordship. Jiva Goswami says not every baby prays, the ones who are pious, they pray. So again, that is an opportunity where we get to pray. And in human form of life, there is a higher chance that the Lord would appear and we would pray. But at the end of 9th month, we come out, immediately Maya catches us. And everyone is dealing with us very nicely. Oh, such a nice baby. Oh, such a cute baby. Oh, he's so good. And we are making funny sounds that, we are trying to speak, but our senses are not in our control. Our motor functions are not aligned well. But people are finding those very attractive. So when we deal with the babies, we see that, the baby is making all kind of gestures, is speaking, saying, oh, those. So when we remember, we feel very nice, we are very happy. It doesn't mean anything, but as parents, as adults, we get attracted. So the baby is feeling, oh, everyone is happy. This is a place, I'm happy here. And in the protection of his parents and all the caring personalities around him, the baby is feeling very nice. So he forgets about all the miseries. So this is what happens in our material life also. We do not realize that the happiness and distress, they come and go. Agma apayino. And we become very happy. So this is where Shukdev Goswami, he did not want to come out of the mother's womb. So he stayed there 11 years, 12 years. And so Vyasadeva was, requesting him to come out. And he said, no. As soon as I'll come out, then material energy will catch me. So at that time, Vyasadeva, by the grace of Lord Shri Krishna, was able to remove the effect of material energy just for 4 pal, right? And within that duration, Shukdev Goswami came out and he literally ran to the forest. So he ran. He did not had to do anything with this material world. He was already a self-realized person. So that qualification of Shukdev Goswami is also established in this chapter, that he did not have to go through any purificatory process. And Srila Prabhupada, he very nicely describes that one who is in this material world has to go through purificatory process and becomes twice born. Yet at the same time, Shukdev Goswami is already a self-realized soul. So he doesn't have to go through it. So there is no need for Janeu to be received. And only a surrendered disciple who's eager to hear about the glories of Lord Shri Krishna, who's eager to serve Lord Shri Krishna, who is eager to engage in devotional service, should be accepted as a disciple. So Srila Prabhupada identifies that a bona fide spiritual master first tests the candidate. They see the interest of the candidate, they see the inclination of the candidate, and then they properly initiate them. And when we are initiated, at that time the disciple receives name which reminds the disciple of Lord Shri Krishna, and anyone who calls the disciple by that name also reminds them of Lord Shri Krishna. So the names are generally related with Radha Krishna, and these names are for our benefit. When our parents name us, then it is for their benefit. So they can give us whatever name when we are born, and that is for the parents' benefit, not for our benefit. But when we receive an initiated name, that is for our benefit. So when one is initiated as twice born, one becomes a Brahmana, right? So that is the first stage. And then next is Dvija. So again, that Brahmana is Dvija. Again, of the 4 Varnas, 3 of them get initiated. That's twice born state. Brahman, Kshatriya and Vaishya. Shudras don't get initiated. So when a Brahmana gets initiated, he is called Dvija. And when he engages in the study of Vedas, when he understands the purport of the Vedas, then he becomes Vipra. And when he engages in devotional service and completely his life, Dharma Sunishtita Pramasa, so all his occupational duties are to serve the Lordship. Everything is dovetailed in pleasing Lord Shri Krishna. Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So that should be our motive in life, to constantly remember Krishna, to constantly engage in his service. And at that time, one reaches that Brahma Bhuta stage and rises above, and that's when one becomes Vaishnava. Otherwise, everyone is aspiring Vaishnava up to that point. Yet at the same time, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was asked, who's a Vaishnava? So he says, anybody who chants the holy name, whoever chants name of Lord Shri Krishna and Radharani, they are Vaishnavas. So to be on that path, all we have to do is follow the instructions by chanting the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. After remembering Shukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, he is paying obeisances to various personalities. So that is also part of our invocation mantra for Srimad Bhagavatam. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiryet. So before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, and the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam is to be able to attain the goal of life, to be able to attain self-realization. You know, it is the very means of the quest, as Srila Prabhupada states. One should first offer obeisances to who? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and unto Narayan Rishi. So, Naram Chaiva Narottamam, Narayan Rishi, as well as the most supermost being, and unto Mother Saraswati, Devim Saraswatim. Sometimes people get confused, they think that this is reference to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. No, it is with respect to Saraswati Mata Sharada that we talked about yesterday, the goddess of learning. And then to Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, because he, placed Srimad Bhagavatam in written format so that we can all benefit. And just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we can attain the goal of life. So it has been very nicely arranged. So questions by the sages. There were 6 questions that the sages had raised to, and the sages were headed by Shaunaka Rishi. We also talked about the importance of the place Naimisharanya. Naimisharanya, when Lord Brahma he started creating in this material universe with all the elements which were provided to him by Lord Shri Krishna, then at that time he created it as a wheel and the spoke of the wheel. So a spoke of the wheel which is, it stays at one point. All of the parts of the wheel, they move, but the spoke is at one point. So that has been placed at Naimisharanya. So that importance of Naimisharanya as a holy place is very important, because when somebody performs sacrifice, when somebody performs devotional service in Naimisharanya, then it becomes multiplied by many thousand times, right? as we can understand that if we are working in an environment, and if the environment is very clean, very nicely arranged, then it is very nice to work and we can get a lot accomplished. Rather than if we are working in an environment where all kind of dirt is all over, objects are scattered everywhere, it's very difficult to even enter an area if it's smelling and all, then it's very difficult to work in that environment. So Naimisharanya is very pure environment. So again the importance of holy pilgrimage, holy place is being glorified. And this is where the sages were performing sacrifice for 1,000 years to ward off the effect of what? Kali age. And then Sutta Goswami comes, so they are happy that after all this, after performing our daily oblations, now we get to hear Harikatha. And they are expressing that we never get tired of hearing Harikatha. So please tell us. And they are posing the 6 questions. So the first question was, what is the ultimate good, right? What is the absolute? What is the ultimate benefit for whole of humanity and for everyone actually? So which will include all living entities. And Sutta Goswami reveals that it is that to attain pure love of Godhead, right? And how can it be attained? It can be attained simply by Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, just by glorifying the Lordship, just by remembering the Lordship, which starts with first hearing about the glories of the Lordship. And in this way, worshipping the Lordship day and night. So that should be the process. So there are 2 paths that are given. So in our life we observe. One is Pravritti Marg, which is sense enjoyment, seeking sense gratification, eat, sleep and be merry. Just engage in that eat, sleep, mate, defend, those 4 basic principles. And these are the principles which are also present in animal life, plant life and other lives. So that is like living an animal life, if that's what we are living for. We have to rise above. And to rise above, we have to have this inquiry, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Why am I here? Why is there misery all around me? What is the purpose of this life? How can I be delivered from all these miseries? What is my goal? What am I supposed to be doing? How can I be happy? Anand Bhaya Abhyasat. And when we see people, growing old and then dying, then the question arises that this is very unnatural. Why does it feel unnatural? Why does it feel very grieving to our heart? Why does it make us sad? Because that is very unnatural. We living entities are eternal beings. We never took birth, we are never going to die. The body is nashwar, yes, the body that we have, it gets annihilated. But it is just like cloth that we are wearing, it's just like a dress, or it's just also referred to as machine. Yantra rodhani mayaya. So this is a machine given by the material energy. And Lord is present in our heart as Paramatma. So that's given in Bhagavad Gita, again and again revealed in the scriptures. So that is Pravritti Marg, and this Pravritti Marg constantly leads to anxiety, misery, suffering, dissatisfaction, void, and quarrel. Means again, the effect of this Kali age we also talked about. Prayena alpayusha sabhya kalavasmin yuge jana manda sumanda matyo manda bhagyo pradutaha. Prayena alpayusha sabhya. People in this Kali age are short-lived, they have short lives. They only live for 100 years as an average. And actually it's reducing as we go on. And near the end of Kali age, it will reduce to just 20 years. So you can imagine it, as the time progresses, it's reducing further and further. Kala vasvinyukechana. And they are very quarrelsome. For very small, provocation, they start the fight. So that is the nature of people in this Kali age. Manda Sumanda Matu. Manda means lazy. People are lazy by nature. So we have to make effort, and when we engage in devotional service, automatically these effects go away, because we are switching from the shelter of Maya to the shelter at the lotus feet of Shri Radha Kṛṣṇa. So this change causes these effects to vanish, and we have to be very much with strong faith and with strong attention. We have to engage in this serving the lotus feet of Lord Shri Radha Kṛṣṇa, Lordships. So here, Manda Sumanda Matya. Sumanda Matya is the intelligence is very less. So they are not very intelligent. mandabhag, and they are unlucky by nature. Even if they want to do something good, things go haywire because of the 4 defects in this material world of the being existing in the material world. Upraduta, and they are constantly disturbed. So this is the nature in this material world. And how do you attain, escape these effects? Just by taking shelter of the Lordship. That doesn't mean that suddenly your Ayu will very much increase, but yes, it will increase if you, from the previous state when you were not, engaging in devotional service. Because in devotional service, the direction of the injunctions and the sadhu and the spiritual master says that one should just seek self-preservation, not sense gratification. So one should lead a life which is very disciplined, very nice, and it is joyfully, the devotional service says, joyfully performed. So it is full with bliss, the transcendental bliss. It is said to be like an overflowing ocean. And yes, happiness in mode of goodness appears first like poison, but afterwards it appears like nectar. And it is that first impact that scares of the materialist, because they have not yet experienced it. It takes effort. It takes a sincere effort. So as a sincere soul, when we take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lordship, He bestows mercy on us. He gives the capability, Paurushyam nature, and the ability in man, Lord Shri Krishna says. And a father, when he sees that the son is serving him very nicely, when the daughter is serving him very nicely, he becomes happy. And so he blesses us so that we can become free of all this anxiety and we can just engage in his devotional service. So those are some of the important aspects. And so after paying the obeisances, again responding to the first question, we talked about the pravritti mark. Then what's the next one? Nivritti mark. Nivritti mark is the path of renunciation. This is a path of engaging in devotional service. We don't renounce everything, we renounce things that are unfavorable for devotional service. And we also discussed it, this is one of the limbs of Sharanagati. And we also call Sharanagati, which is being described very nicely by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as cool mantra. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyati te vishvaso gopatitve varnam tatha atmanikshepa karparniye shadvidha sharanagati. Anukulyasya sankalpya, accepting everything in favor of devotional service, rejecting everything which are unfavorable for devotional service, understanding rakshishyati iti vishvaso, having a strong faith of surrender that Lord will provide us protection, gopatitve varnam tatha, accepting the guardianship of the Lordship, that He is our maintainer, He is our care, He is our Father. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva, tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva, tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva, tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. So this is where we understand when we sing this prayer that you are my mother, you are my father, you are my friend, you are my sakha, you are my everything. Everything you are providing for me. That is taking the guardianship of the Lordship. Karparniya. Karparniya means in a humble mood. Always staying humble, which has been also propagated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Shri Shastrika gives us this beautiful formula to live life with. Tranadapi shunichena tarurapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Thinking of ourselves lower than the grass on the street, tranadapi shunichena. And tarurapi sahishnuna means more tolerant than the tree. Amanina, not expecting any respect from others. Manadena, always being ready to give respect to others. Kirtaniya sadahari. We can constantly chant the glories of the Lordship. So if we want to become free from all anxieties, from all the disturbances, from all the effects of this Kali age, we should engage in dharma, which will develop our attraction. Dharma sunishtita pamsam vishvakshena kathas no utpadyate rati yadi ratama. If the occupation duty we perform does not bring attraction to the lotus feet of the Lordship, such activities are Shrama eva hi kevalam. They are just useless labor. We are wasting our time. And this is where Srila Prabhupada, he is giving the example that a camel, when it's trying to eat the twigs of a tree, the thorns are there. And when along with the thorn, the camel is tasting its own blood, is thinking, oh, this is very relishing. So materialists are like that. They are spending their important time, this human form of life, the rare form of life, in doing all kind of sense gratificatory activities, and for that they are engaged in very hard labor. And they're thinking this is very nice, but they're constantly undergoing miseries. They're constantly paving their path to further fall down into the lower forms of life, where it is very difficult and there is no possibility of God consciousness unless again there is a causeless mercy of Lord Shri Krishna or his devotees, the Vaishnavas. So a materialist is just like this camel whose tongue is pierced by the thorns, mouth inside is pierced by the thorns when it's trying to eat the twigs from the tree, and it's tasting its own blood and thinking, oh, this is very nice, and thinking that this is the taste of the twig, the leaves that it's trying to, and the branches that it's trying to eat. So this is the effect of Maya. This is the delusion. Maya means that which is not. So when we think that these things are meant for our sense gratification, it is not attached, it's not related with Lord Shri Krishna. That is delusion, and that is something that we should be, refraining from. We should be staying away from, and we should be taking the path of nivritti. Nivritti, renunciation, doesn't mean you renounce everything. You renounce things that are unfavorable for devotion service. And renunciation, there is a word in Sanskrit that says tushti. Tushti means renunciation, which means satisfaction in understanding the favorable aspects of life when engaging in devotional service. So that is the true dharma. And our constitutional position is Jivera Sarupaya Kṛṣṇa Nityadas. Yes. Then in the 6th verse is the response given of this chapter. So what is the absolute, ultimate benefit for everyone? Save pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adoksha jay ahetukiya pratihata yayatma suprasiddhati. The supreme occupation, the dharma of all humanity, is that by which the man can attain to loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. Save pumsam paro dharma, the topmost dharma, topmost occupation. And such devotional service, how should it be performed? Ahetuki apratiyata. Hetu means, with an interest, but ahetuki, without any motivation. Ahetuki. So, hetu means motivation, motivated. So, ahetuki is unmotivated. Not self-motivated, but motivated to please Lord Shri Krishna. That's what it means. When we talk about selfless, selfless doesn't mean that I don't exist. Selfless means that I don't seek sense gratification, rather I seek sense gratification of Lord Shri Krishna. I want to serve and please Lord Shri Krishna. Similarly, ahetuki. Apratihata means without any interruption, on a regular basis, regulated service is important, which is uninterrupted. Apratihata. Pratihata means interrupted. So apratihata is uninterrupted. Yayatma suprasiddhati. It would completely satisfy the self. It will completely fill us with the satisfaction, tushyanti cha, and then we will experience transcendental bliss. Next question they asked is, question number 2 is, what is the essence of all the scriptures, all the bona fide scriptures? And here they also had another hidden question, that please assimilate the essence of all the teachings of the acharyas, the previous spiritual masters, and reveal it to us. So the essence of all the scriptures is to please Lord Shri Krishna. And that's also given in Bhagavad Gita. This secret has already been revealed in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridasannivishto mattah smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvairahamiva vedyo vedant kridved vid eva chaham. Sarvasya chaham hridasannivishto. So Lord is saying that I am residing in the heart of every living entity. Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes smriti, remembrance, jnanam, knowledge, and apohanam, forgetfulness. So when we want to forget Krishna, he even allows that. And he is the essence of all the Vedas. Sarvasya chaham hridasannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarver ahameva vedyo vedant kridved vida eva chaham. He is the knower of the Vedas, and the purpose of the Vedas is to know him, and he has assimilated Vedas. So there Srila Prabhupada said that, he empowered Srila Vyasadeva as his Shaktavesh avatar, as his empowered incarnation, to author all the Vedas, to write all the Vedas, so that we people in Kali age can attain salvation. However, at the same time, Vedas talk about all kind of subject matters for all kind of people. So they talk about Pravritti Marg as well as Nimritti Marg. But Nimritti Marg in Vedas is like, talking about devotional service, is like a diamond shop. And how many people do you see at diamond shop? Well, on a vegetable shop and general groceries, you will see crowd after crowd, because they are seeking, not so important things, but which they seek regularly for their sustenance. But this is like diamond. Devotional service, bhakti is like diamond. And bhaja refers to bhakti. Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Moolamate. When Srila Shankaracharya, Sripad Shankaracharya is singing this, he is actually identifying that Govinda, Lord Shri Krishna, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we should engage constantly in his devotional service. Yet at the same time, his followers could not understand the message and get bewildered. So here, Sutta Goswami is revealing in the 7th verse. So 6th and 7th verse both answer this question, specifically 7th verse. Vasudeve Bhagavata Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayada Hetukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, Srila Prabhupada writes, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. So bhakti has two sons. Detachment, which is vairagya, and then knowledge, jnana. So jnana and vairagya have been identified here. Janayatyashu vairagyam jnanam cha yada hetukam, and a hetu. So again, this is unmotivated again being identified, that one immediately gets causeless mercy, causeless knowledge. Now another one that we talk about is a very important verse in the progression. It is about Shavatam, but before that there are two very important verses that appear. We already talked about Dharma Sunishtita Pumsam Vishvakshena Kathasayaha. So we should engage in devotion, in occupational duties which develop our affection, our attraction towards Lord Shri Krishna. So that is 1 to 8. And then Sutta Goswami also revealing, because it's very important to understand what is absolute truth. The Srimad Bhagavatam deals with not the subject matter of God, but rather the subject matter of absolute truth. So what is absolute truth? So he is saying the learned transcendentalists understand absolute truth in 3 forms. And what's the verse? Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwaniti shabdyate. So he is identifying that the learned transcendentalists who understand the absolute truth accept absolute truth in 3 forms. First is Brahmeti, as Brahman effulgence, which is the bodily effulgence of Lord Shri Krishna. Paramatma, the super soul residing in every living entity's heart and even in atoms and spaces between atoms. And Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, who is always having loving exchanges, engaging in loving exchanges with his devotees in Golok Vrindavan. So in these 3 forms, and these 3 forms can also be explained by Srila Prabhupada in his purpose as, like we see the sunshine. So when there is sunshine, we understand that there is sun. So sunshine, so sun, planet, is the cause. So again, we call it a star because it's emanating light, and that globe. So let's just call it globe. So the sun globe always gives sunshine. So the sunshine represents Brahman effulgence. And of course, sun planet represents Paramatma feature. And then the presiding deity, on the sun planet is representing Bhagwan. So it is the presiding deity with whose effulgence is the sun planet glowing and the sunshine is coming. So he is the cause. Similarly, Lord Krishna, from him is his expansion, which is partial expansion of Lord Shri Krishna is Paramatma feature, and further partial is Brahman effulgence. So this is a very important verse for us to understand. Yes. So now the invocation mantra, one of the invocation mantra that we recite for Srimad Bhagavatam. Sharvatam Soya Katha Krishna Punya Shivana Kirtana Hridayanta Stohya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhasratam. So, Lord Shri Krishna, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, Srila Prabhupada states, and he is the benefactor of the faithful devotee. So, yes, he is benefactor of all living entities, but especially for the faithful devotee. He cleanses the desire for material attachment, that enjoyment from the heart of the devotee. So from the heart of a bhakta, he removes the desire to enjoy in this material world, who has developed the urge to hear his message. So when we hear with attention, all these kind of anarthas, they are washed away from our heart. And his messages, Lord Krishna's messages, are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So again, Shamanam, Kirtanam have been again identified. And then another verse that comes is, in the invocation is, Nashta Praesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavti Naishtiki. Irrevocable fact, Naishtiki. So again, Nashta Praesha Bhadreshu, all kind of this Bhadrashus, all kind of anarthas, they are washed away. Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Matsara, lust, anger, greed, pride, envy and delusion, all these are washed away from our hearts when we do Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, regular study of Bhagavatam, regular study and chanting of Bhagavatam, reading of Bhagavatam, studying of Bhagavatam, remembering Lord Shri Krishna when we are reading Bhagavatam. Bhagavate Uttam Shloke, where in Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is glorified in the choicest of verses, Uttam Shloke. So his glory is one who is glorified in this manner. Of course, Bhaktir Bhavti Naishtiki. So when we engage in this way, devotional service, is established in our heart. And this is an irrevocable fact. That is a truth. It's a fact. So when we talk about Bhagavat, then there is Srimad Bhagavatam, which is book Bhagavat, and there is person Bhagavat. So a person Bhagavat is as good as book Bhagavat because he lives the life as per Bhagavatam. So in Bhagavad Gita we hear what to be done. Bhagavatam we hear how to be done. And from a person Bhagavatam we see how he is doing it so we can follow him. Yet following in the mood of Anusharan, not Anukaran, not just copying, imitating his actions, but rather taking shelter of his instruction by giving seva. So again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when revealing to Sanatana Goswami, he is saying that in reality, in this Kali age, there are three, important activities that we should be engaged in. So that is the true dharma. What is the true dharma? Vaishnava Seva. So again, Namaruchi and Jivotaya. So those are the three important principles we should be living by. So third question that they asked was, why did Lord Krishna appear in the womb of Devaki as son of Vasudeva? So Lord Krishna, he appeared to attract the living entities. So the Goswami responds, and in his original form and pastimes he appeared so that the living entities may go back home, back to Godhead, to the abode of Lord Shri Krishna, Golokudham. So that is in the 34th verse. This answer has been provided by Sutta Goswami. Bhaviyatya esha sattvena lokan ve loka bhavanaha lilavatan uranto devatriyan naradishu. Thus the Lord of the universe maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, man and lower animals. He assumes the roles of incarnations. He performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. So this has been given. Now, they also asked a question. Question number 4 was, please describe the pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. So here this answer is actually given in the 3rd chapter. So we will be discussing this, the response to this 4th question in the 3rd chapter, which is in the next class. And the question number 5th, he partially addresses that. Please tell us the purpose of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the activities. So the sages at Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunaka Rishi, had asked this question, and it was partially responded by Sutta Goswami, where he talks about the primary creation and giving a hint of the secondary creation of this material universe. He is saying that from the Lord and his energies, by the causeless mercy of the Lord, his energy manifests these material universes, and also his internal potency maintains the spiritual universes, which are never annihilated. So again, there is a very philosophical question with respect to that. So we will also be covering that question in detail in the next class. Now question number 6 is, where have the religion has taken shelter? So where has religion taken shelter after Lord Krishna returned back home to his abode, back to Golok Vrindavan? So that is also being addressed in the 3rd chapter. So we'll be covering that in our next class. So more like 3.5 questions have been answered in this chapter. So this is where we end the class today. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining us, and hope you benefited in studying. And as we understand, this beautiful purpose, the transcendental ecstasies of Srila Prabhupada, reveal such wonderful aspects, where he also discusses many other aspects, but because of time we are not able to cover, which is like he's talking of a neophyte and a pure devotee, Uttama Adhikari, then Madhyama Adhikari, who is the preacher. Madhyama Adhikari is where preaching happens, and then Kanishta Adhikari is where the person has not yet developed faith to hearing, but by constant hearing the person rises to the level of Madhyama Adhikari, and then by continuously engaging in devotional service, and one becomes purified and becomes a Vaishnava to the Uttama Adhikari stage. And Srila Prabhupada, by his example, he was an Uttama Adhikari, but by his mercy, he would step down to Madhyama Adhikari's platform to preach, but he was always situated at the Uttama Adhikari state. So this is where we end the class. Hare Krishna. Thank you for very much joining us. Gantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitaya Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.